Hey, what's up, everyone? Rip City Real Talk is back. Craig Moshkow, Anthony Blaylock here to recap another week of Blazers basketball, and this is a pretty grim week, man. This is not our favorite week to talk about. We talk about in the show going 500 or better, and I actually think we've only done one time this year we were not 500 or better. This time, not so great. Five games
Yeah.
to talk about.
Oh, and
Five,
five, man.
five
And a
losses.
couple of them were heartbreakers too. I mean, I think we had two 1 point losses and then a 2 point loss to the Grizz. Oh, it was just a rough week, bro.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, three of these games I felt like they should have gone our way. I really
Yes.
do. I mean, two of them I'm not mad we lost, and we'll get into all that. But yeah, it's definitely some grim, dark days in the old Blazers realm.
I think, I mean, I don't know about you. I think a lot of fan bases go through this kind of stuff every year where they lose a few critical games or they go through a stretch. I think, but we're used to the Blazers starting slow at the beginning of the year. And then this is typically after the All-Star break. This is when we play our best
Mhm.
basketball. And I think that's what's alarming to a lot of fans. It feels like the wheels are falling off at the worst time of the year.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
I agree. I don't know how much of that has to do. I mean, we knew we had a tough schedule. We knew that the second half of the season was going to be after the All Star break, just about as brutal as it gets.
yeah.
We talked about the amount of teams that were over 500, the amount of teams we had to play that were playoff contenders, and really just the condensed amount of games in general.
Mhm.
And you're already kind of starting to see guys get banged up. Dame's missed some time. Jones missed some time. It's starting to kind of with Nurk's maintenance
Mhm.
really up until this point. Just not a good time to not have everybody out there playing at full strength. And even when they are out there and they're at full strength, it hasn't looked overwhelmingly impressive, which is disappointing. So
Sure.
jump right into it, man. We'll start with the Charlotte game. We're not going to spend too much time in this week's episode going over every game because we have 5 games to go over. So we'll kind of talk about some key things that we noticed and really just break the week down as a whole and
Sounds
kind of
great.
go from there for everybody. So I think Charlotte's a good starting point. What do you notice?
Yeah. Okay. So Charlotte, we have no Dame. We already know that things are going to be a little bit rough. And in this game, so Rondé Hollis Jefferson gets 22 minutes, which is kind of a surprise to me. Derek Jones does not play. This is the DNP coach's decision game for Derek
Yeah.
Jones. Now, it was told that it was non-health related, but he did miss time due to health this week. So I'm going to ask you some questions about Derek Jones later on in the pod, and we'll go through some of that. But Rondé Hollis Jefferson gets 22 minutes. Covington plays 24. CJ plays 40 minutes and only gets 22 points, which okay. And the Norman the Rock Powell gets 17. I swear that guy gets between 15 and 19 every single game. He's just a rock. Um, in my notes for Charlotte, I have the word yikes. I can't believe that Melo if Melo has to be the superhero to save us, we are in a bad way, right? And in the second half of that game, Melo had to go
Yeah.
absolutely crazy just for us to even be in that game, man. And that is mind-boggling to me. I understand not having Dame, but we expected Charlotte to be a team we could kind of put the hurting on.
Yeah, they're and we talk about them every time we play them. They're one of the more athletic young teams. They have some of the best ball handlers in the league. When I say ball handlers, I don't mean dribbling ability. I mean the ability to handle the ball and pass. They have a lot of guys that can get a triple double really on a nightly basis. And I understand that there was no Graham and there was no Lamelo, and they were definitely down some guys for sure. But Terry Rozier and these guys are, Miles Bridges are some of the best athletic players in the league.
Yes.
Just they're a fun team. They're known around the league to just be a fun team to watch.
Mhm.
It was not fun for us. We
No.
got blitzed early.
Yep.
I think Rozier had 17 in the first quarter. They were insanely hot. And I think the biggest thing, and we're going to talk about this later because I noticed it a lot in really both these Memphis games. And quite frankly, a lot of our games, we've talked about it and touched on it throughout the year. But that game in particular, we just were terrible from three. And when you miss the three and you get those long rebounds, teams are immediately able to start pushing the ball. And the Blazers have been one of the worst transition defenses in the league. And you give that kind of a team with that kind of athleticism and the ability to pass that ball that many opportunities to get rebounds and go, it's
Yes.
bad news. And it was bad news. We got way down in the first half. and couldn't quite dig our way out until the Melo break. And even then, it was just a little too late.
Well, and listen to this. I mean, so they shot 18 of 43 from three. That's 41%. Not only did they take 43 threes, we shot 10 of 36. So we shot less, made less, and shot 27%. I don't know how the Blazers expect to win games when we shoot three like that. And then, like you said, they got out in transition off those long rebounds, and they're a pretty good transition team, and we are a terrible defensive transition team. I mean, embarrassing stuff out of the Blazers in that game, I thought.
Yeah, when your team relies on the 3-point ball and you're a league leader in threes attempted and you shoot 27%, you're already in a bad spot. You're already in a bad way. And then when you give it up to a team like that, who now you're having to try to sprint back down the court and figure out the defense and where they're going to be, and these guys are just popping up for a quick three or completely going around you and driving to the rim. I mean, Bridges had his way with us, and it's unfortunate. I don't know if Dame would have made a big difference in that game. I know Nurk was still kind of on his minutes issue, so it's a tough one. But the big things to talk about in that game, honestly, were Hollis Jefferson starting, and then Jones not playing. So I know you touched on it a little bit. I honestly liked Hollis Jefferson starting. I had no problem with that. I honestly think that he's a better defender. He's a hustle guy, a high energy guy, and he made a lot of good high energy plays in that game. I don't mind Jones coming off the bench as long as we have somebody else playing defense. We've talked about it all year. I don't like the 3-guard lineup. We get somebody with some length up there, I'm fine with it. And I like the CJ and Powell combination, fine. But Jones should have got minutes off the bench. And I just don't. I mean, you touched on it. Maybe he was a little banged up, but you'd think they would come out and say something. There's been some issues with him and Stotts lately, so it's kind of an interesting deal to not have him play based on a coach's decision.
Yeah, I would say of all the players that are out there, his energy is the most that goes up and down. You know, sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not. And I don't know if Stotts just doesn't like that, or if Stotts and him are having problems with figuring out their relationship and their coaching situation, but it has been frustrating because you feel like Derrick Jones is probably one of the most highest upside defenders we have, right? I mean, Covington's super rock solid, but you'd like to see Derrick Jones and that upside be utilized, and we just can't. So Hollis Jefferson is a utilitarian guy, right? We can throw him in there, and he's a hustle, energy defender. He's always kind of in the right spots. So I liked what I saw out of him, and if we have to play Rondae Hollis Jefferson, I'm fine with that. It's just the Derrick Jones conundrum is starting to become kind of an issue here.
Yeah, fans are pretty bummed out about Jones not getting a lot of playing time. If Jones played like Hollis Jefferson plays, with that type of energy, always being around the ball, the offensive rebounds, he'd probably be our third best player. I'd take him over Nurk. I really think that people won't say, well, Stotts just puts him out in the 3-point line and he just sits in the 3-point line. Maybe. But, you notice Hollis Jefferson kind of floats between the 3-point line and the rim. He's always able to hurry up and get in there for an offensive rebound. He's cutting constantly. He has a little bit more playmaking ability than Jones. He's actually a pretty sneaky good passer.
Yes.
But you notice things with him, like every time there's a drive, he's in there swiping at the ball and then backing back out to his guy. He's always in somebody's face. I mean, there's been a couple lapses where he definitely, didn't do quite so hot, and that's going to be something the guy who hasn't really played much and really at all this year until getting on the Blazers. You're still going to have a little bit of that rust, but overall, the hustle and the energy, that is what I'm talking about when I talk about Jones not performing. He doesn't do those types of things consistent enough. And I agree with you. I think there's something going on with him and Stotts is probably upset about it because a lot of this team's defensive issues, quite frankly, I think have to do with effort more than anything. And the players that we have really that don't have a lot of the ability to be good defenders. And if you're not going to have a lot of natural ability, then you have to be able to hustle and use some energy. And Jones has it in him. I just haven't seen much of it. So I can totally understand why, Hollis Jefferson started over him. But man, on the bench against an athletic team like that, you would think you'd want that wingspan and that size out there. So not my favorite decision. If it was a coach's decision, I think it was I don't think he could have helped you offensively. Maybe that's another reason he never got in the game because he's not going to score for you. And so maybe they figured, we need to get offense out there right now. But you would think that you also need to stop them. They're a young team. And if you can slow them down a little bit, like we kind of did at a couple points throughout the game, you think you'd be able to crawl back in. That's a tough balance between having a guy who's a good defender but can't score.
Yeah, it's killer. And then I think the other thing is when you look at guys like Hollis Jefferson, Covington, and Nasir Little, all three of them give you hustle, but they also give you these rebounding. I don't ever see Derrick Jones trying to crash the boards. He cuts sporadically at times. There's times where he cuts a bunch of times in a row, and there's times where he's invisible and he's in the weak side corner. I don't have the answer. I think it's sad that we can't figure out how to use him.
Yeah.
But at this point, it sort of is what it is, right?
No, I agree. I mean, I know that he missed some time after that, and he sneaks in for a couple minutes here and there, but he's definitely lost any chance of starting. He's not going to be starting anymore.
Well, and
Turn that one down.
okay, so in the next game, the Clippers game, so moving on to that, we started the 3 guard lineup, right? And
Yep.
you're not a fan of the 3 guard lineup.
No, I don't believe so. We didn't
We
have
didn't in the Clips
Dame
game.
or Nurk. No, we didn't have Dame or Nurk
Oh,
in
that's
that
right.
game.
No, you're right. You're right. We didn't because Dame came back in the Denver game. Okay, you're right. So we'll talk about the 3 guard lineup some more, but here's what I have from the Clippers game. This was a really close game, and this is another one of those games that was a coin flip game, kind of like the Jazz game last week that we recapped, where it was kind of just one of those situations where we missed a couple shots and they hit a couple shots. But to be that close against the Clippers without Dame, I thought was pretty encouraging. I was feeling pretty positive about that game, even though we lost. On the Paul George, he scored the last 8 points for the Clippers, and that last foul wasn't really, it was pretty ticky-tack, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it was ticky tack because the the NBA came out and basically said
Yes.
it wasn't a foul.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he had passed the ball. We had tipped it out of bounds. If you look at the clock after the tip, it probably goes down under 4 seconds. It's still a tricky situation because that he's going to get the ball back and he can hit probably over anybody that was on the floor out there. I mean, Hollis Jefferson did his best. He kind of drew a couple fouls, but still, that's not a lot of time to work with. If you double him real quick or you just make it life hard on him, he probably gets a tough shot to win that game. If he misses, you're good to go. But instead, he gets fouled. He makes the free throws. We go down and really, again, had a good look at it. I mean, the play before he got fouled, I don't know how many fans noticed this, but CJ passed that ball to Norman Powell, and Norman Powell had a wide open 3 from the corner where he was coming into the Blazers at least, a 50% shooter from 3 from the corner spot, wide open, has a chance to make that game a 4-point game. It's a dagger at that point, bricks it. And that was the story of the night to me in that Clipper game, was just the 3-point bricks. CJ shoots 3 of 12. Norman Powell shoots 3 of 10.
Yep.
So that's not going to cut it, man. You go 6 of 22 from your 2 guys that are going to be the primary scorers from 3-point land. Problem.
Again, so in this game, we shot 31% from 3. Now, we did outshoot the Clippers from 3, but they crushed us in the paint. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter at all. And when you shoot 31% against a team that you're supposed to, I mean, in order to beat the Clippers, I don't think we're ever going to be able to stop them. So we're just going to have to outshoot them. And in this game, we just couldn't. I thought we did well defensively. I wrote down a couple things here. So I wrote down that Rondae Hollis Jefferson and Nas both played pretty good minutes when they had to in spots. Melo shot 5 for 18 in this game. And sometimes we live and die with Melo, and it's sad to say, but he shot 5 for 18, and that's just not good enough against a good team like this.
No, when you don't have Dame and you don't have Nurk, I mean, Melo kind of has to be that guy to give you offense. Yep. And again, he's just hit or miss at this point in his career. He's had actually a pretty good streak this entire week. He really didn't shoot too bad. He actually scored decent, and he had a couple points over games over 20.
Yep.
I mean, he was doing all right, but yeah, when you're talking about having no Dame, no Nurk, and when Powell and CJ are off like that, at least from 3-point land, you got to rely on Melo a little bit more than normal, and that's rough. That's rough to see 5 of 18.
Yeah, 5 of 18 was painful. I wrote it down. Derek Jones played 21 minutes in that game. Powell played 39. CJ played 36 and got 28 points. I mean, there's not a ton here. Anthony Simons got 13 points. That's kind of sneaky in 19 minutes. Ooh.
Yeah, he shot 50%, I think, too. He actually did pretty solid.
Yeah. Big takeaways from the Clippers game?
Just like that it was competitive. I know fans are upset about this and the Nuggets, and we'll touch on that in a sec. But honestly, they didn't have Kawhi Leonard, so us not having Dame, it's kind of a wash there. And they didn't have Patrick Beverley, which I don't know, who cares. But again, it's just one of those situations where you had a chance to win it. You missed a couple clean shots. I mean, CJ hit a big clutch 3, and then Powell misses a clutch 3. And then CJ has a decent look with kind of George was in his face, but he sidestepped him, had a little chance to get that up, and he misses it. It's just one of those things where you wish the defense would have closed out in the end of the game and really stopped George, but that's Paul George. I mean, he's playing at a ridiculous level lately, one of the best players in the league the last couple weeks, and it's just tough to stop. I mean, Kept the top no matter what. You're not a good defensive team. And Cantor's your starting center, and he's down there trying to block Paul George. It's just not going to end pretty. So it's
Well,
too
and
bad. That's the only takeaway, though.
yeah, and with the thing about Paul George that's a problem is he's a big guard. He's scored, I think he averaged 29 and a half in April, so he's been on an absolute tear. And the problem is if you stick, let's say for example, you stick Covington on him. Well, they have a bunch of big guys like Marcus Morris and they have, Kawhi.
Mhm.
Typically, Kawhi didn't play in this game, but they have a lot of mismatches where if you stick your power forward on Paul George, now you have a guard guarding one of their forwards. And with our little guards, it's gonna be a mismatch. So I just think that's a tough team. I don't want to match up with them. I've thought that every time we played them this year, that Paul George has just bullied us hard.
Yeah, their wings are too big for us to be able to defend
Yeah.
against. I mean, I know people like to talk about Powell being a good defender, but he's even with his wingspan, he's not big enough to consistently take Kawhi Leonard.
Nope.
Kawhi would destroy him in the block. He can shoot over him. It's just
Yep.
not going to be ideal for us. And then when you talk about George playing defense on either Dame or CJ, it locks a lot of our potential offense up. It's going to be hard to stop them on the other end. They're
Right.
just one of those teams that have two really good wings. They don't have a lot of bigs. So you got to think if you have a healthy Nurk, maybe that makes somewhat of a difference. He's actually been playing really good his last couple games, the
Yep.
two Memphis games especially. But I mean, maybe if you get Nurk, you're in a good spot. But still, it's just tough to take any team that has that kind of length when we just don't have that length. It's been a problem
Yep.
for years. It's going to continue to be a problem. So I
Yep.
agree. Don't want to be matched up against the Clippers. And as we get to this podcast, doesn't sound like we will be
No,
matched
it
up
doesn't
against.
sound like it. Yeah. So, okay, moving into the Denver game, did you have notes or did you have anything a big takeaway from the Denver game?
Again, I thought that was one of the best games we've played collectively on the year. Every
Agreed.
stat, we broke down the stats throughout both teams. It was pretty
Yeah.
even. They didn't dominate us in anything. We didn't dominate them in anything, which is
Yep.
unfortunate. But overall, when you think starters versus starters, I thought we played really good against them.
Yeah.
It just kind of came down to, again, the end of the game. It came down to some plays that could have gone one way or the other.
Mhm.
We had that jump ball situation. We lose the jump ball, but then Rodko gets the tip off the tip. He goes down.
That one
It's just
stung,
sucks,
man.
man. Because he had CJ for an easy layup and he turned his back on him to flip the
Yes.
ball back. I'm assuming he wanted to get the ball back to Dame. He ended up getting
Yes.
the Powell who missed that floater. But
Yep.
if he looks and he has the vision and
Yeah.
he sees CJ, I think he can easily make that pass. Even with Jokic right there, CJ gets an easy layup. That game's over. Instead,
Yep.
Powell gets the ball. He misses it. The one thing that I take away from that and that particular play, because I think, again, it was competitive all across the board. I didn't really see anything I'm upset about, but we had a timeout. And when it comes down to being 4 seconds left when you get that ball in your possession, I'm a little upset we didn't use the timeout. I don't understand it. I do not understand why you don't call a timeout. You get the ball on the sideline. You get to figure something out, draw up a play, try to get the ball into Dame's hands instead of a scramble fast break with the ball in Robert Covington's hands of all people. Like, you have possession. When you get possession, you call timeout. So I don't understand. I mean, maybe they felt like, hey, we have an advantage because we caught them off guard. And now we're running the fast
No.
break. But if that's the case, then you need to get the ball and do a fast break. When you realize that
Yes.
you didn't have the play you wanted, that's when, in my opinion, you call the timeout and set something up. So who knows? I think you could have got a better shot doing that. And that really just kind of pissed me off. I just don't understand
Yep.
where the mindset is there when you don't, why you don't call a timeout when you have one. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand the players may not be aware of that stuff in the moment, but that's on Stotts to say, hey, this ain't going to work out like I wanted. We lost our fast break opportunity. Well, let's draw something up and take our last time out and figure this out. So
Yeah.
bummer,
This
man.
week was this was not a pinnacle week for Stotts coaching. I will say that there was a lot of stuff that could have been done better. Now, to be fair, Norman Powell had a game-winning shot, like you said, against the Clippers. He had a three-point shot and it was wide open, and he could have won us that game. And then against Denver, he had a decent look at that floater that also didn't fall. So, I mean, I'm not going to blame Stotts 100% for us not converting a couple of wide open or decent looks. But at the end of the day, with 4 seconds left, okay, so the argument would be that you don't want to give the defense the ability to set up against you. Well, if we're such a great offensive team and we have all these shooters, we really shouldn't worry about letting a defense set up against us if we have 4 or 5 seconds to make a play. I agree with you. And when we talked about it after the game and you said that we had a timeout, I was like, are you serious? Like, it was flabbergasting to me that we would have had a timeout in our back pocket and not use it in that situation. That's unforgivable to me.
Right, and I agree with you. You don't want to let the defense sit up. I understand that, but that's where Stotts is touted as an offensive mind. I've been
Exactly.
okay with him not being a great defensive coach because we've
Sure.
been a top offense so long. But
Great point.
again, when you have C.J. McCollum and Norman Powell that you can put in a corner, and this guy named Damian Lillard, he's only probably been the top clutch player all year. So when you have those guys,
Yes.
you got to put something up. And like I said, I get that you had a fast break and maybe you wanted to let them play out because you caught them off guard. But as soon as Robert Covington turns his back and doesn't hit CJ,
Yes.
to me, that's where you have to do something and set something up. So
I have a question
again,
for
happy we
you.
were competitive at least.
I have a question for you about that Denver game. Do you know who our leading assist guy was in that game?
Leading assist guy, I mean, I would assume CJ McCollum, but you're laughing, so I'm going to go with Jusuf Nurkic.
Jusuf Nurkic. Nurkic had 8.6 assists and 7 rebounds in 29 minutes in that game and looked really good. I mean, I think Lamar Hurd said that he and Jokic looked like two polar bears fighting on a glacier or something like that. I was laughing so hard.
By the way, he said that. I don't know if he said that. He said that on Earth Day, so that hits even deeper, man. That's a global warming thing. Like, I didn't know that the
Lamar never
commentators
changed.
were so deep.
Yeah,
I mean, it did, and it's funny because this was the first game, in my opinion, that I've really seen Nurk play big, heavy minutes.
Yes.
He sat out the game before, so I think in really the last couple of games he hasn't been on a restriction, so I think that's done. Thank goodness. But yeah, he just looked bad.
Oh wait, he played good defense on Jokic until the last 3 possessions, and then Jokic went absolutely supernova. He's an MVP candidate for a reason. The dude is a freak, and he can do it all. But man, I thought Nurk played him really tough for like 3.5 quarters.
He did. It's the second game in a row against a good team with their best player.
Yep.
Just absolutely dominated us in the end of the game. And for some reason, we're not getting the ball in Dame's hands enough.
Yeah, and look, I'm not trying to criticize Dame for only getting 22 points, but he and CJ, so CJ got 14 and Dame got 22 in that game. These guys are 25-point scorer guards. We need 50 points out of them. And I'm not trying to be like ask too much of these guys, but if you're going to be a net negative on defense, you have to give us something. And CJ scoring 14 points is just not getting it done, man.
Yeah, there's something up with Dame. There really feels like there's something up with Dame. I'm not seeing the explosiveness. I'm not seeing the shots fall. I don't know if that's to do with just his legs or whatever the situation is, but again, I agree with you 100%. When you're going against a team like Denver, you need your 2 stars to be stars.
Yes.
And that's not star power. That's not the guards that have notoriously given us 50 points a night combined.
Yeah. That's tough, man.
Tough one for sure.
I mean, here's the deal, though. If we win both of those games, or if we win one of those games, I think the fan base is talking totally different ball game. And both of those games were basically a coin flip, where Paul George gets a foul call and makes the free throws, and Jokic got the last foul call and made free throws. We missed game winners in both. I do fault Stotts a lot for coaching, and I do fault CJ and Dame for not producing at their superstar level. I don't know that you can really knock guys like Covington and Powell on defense, because every time I watch them, they're just absolutely rugged. They're doing everything they can with the tools that they got as both on-ball defenders and help defenders, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I still think the Dame and CJ defense was becoming a bigger issue. Teams are learning how to attack them. It's going to be an issue all year.
We've talked about this too. I mean, so in the Denver game, we had really inconsistent ball movement. There was a quarter, there was a couple quarters where we're just whipping the ball around, and we're scoring at ease, and then all of a sudden, it's just like the ball just stops. And that to me is when Stotts needs to do some fine tuning to the offense, but it doesn't feel like anything happens. And then if they get out of their funk, the players are responsible for just crawling their way out of this hole. And I just don't know. I just feel like there's something wrong in the locker room with this team where like we just go stale at times.
They don't look happy, and I think that happiness leads into energy. When you don't have the energy, you stop doing that. And again, I've been trying to stick up for Stotts because I don't think this is all his issue. I'm not saying part of it, and probably most of it's, definitely going to be his fault, but I just lately I'm noticing that you're exactly right. Like, it seems like he's relying too much on Dame and CJ to be Dame and CJ, and they're just not being Dame and CJ. And you have to figure out ways to to either get that ball moved around and come up with some more creativity to get guys like Nurk the ball more, to get, Powell an open look from three. Instead, it's like, okay, we'll set a couple screens for Damon CJ. We drew up the screenplay, go out and do this. And then if that breaks down, it's like, I have nothing. There's no adjustments. And that's also on the guys. That's also on the players that are out there. They have to realize, hey, this shot clock's down within 8. I'm not going to get the ball here. So I need to be able to make a move. And you don't always want to do that because you need to know that Damon CJ trusts you to be in the corner if they have to throw it out after they attempt to drive. But there's a certain point where it's like you have to understand that this play is breaking down. The play that was called did not work. You need to adjust. And the good teams continue to do that. We don't seem to do that very often.
No, and I think a lot of the reason that we revert to those tendencies is when we get punched in the mouth a little bit, we sort of tend to just go back to what used to work. It's like a comfort thing, right? And I feel like we had the conversation over the last couple of weeks that this feels like that Toronto team that they broke up and traded when they got Kawhi, they traded DeMar DeRozan. I don't think it was all coaching. I don't think it was all players. I think it was just a combination. And I think the same thing is going to happen to the Blazers at some point. We're going to need a new voice as a leader, and we're going to have to change up some of the locker room a little bit because these guys playing together for so long, they just tend to revert and snap back to their comfort zone. And that is not something that's going to work as the NBA continues to evolve and the Western Conference continues to get deeper and deeper every year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we were talking about that. To me, it's like when the president wants to go and just nuke somewhere. Okay, you want to take the league by storm. You want to blow everybody up and dominate them and win the battles. In order to launch the nuke, in order to be that team, you kind of have to have. There's two keys. All right, you have the key, and that's the head coach, and then you have the personnel key and the big roster shakeup. Toronto did that. They fired their coach and they bring in Nurse. They trade away DeRozan. They get Kawhi. They win the championship. Plain and simple. The Blazers need to do that. We're going to talk about this more in the offseason, obviously. I think we both agree that this will probably be Stotts last year unless they make some miraculous just run in the playoffs, which if we make the playoffs at this point, because that's not even a guarantee now.
Yeah.
But even if we trade Stotts, I really feel deep down, and I know a lot of people there's a lot of people that are on the fence with this, but the CJ thing is going to have to happen in order for this team to tap their full potential. So, we'll discuss that more, but
there's a possibility that we trade CJ and we get worse. But at this point, you have to look at the long-term longevity of this team and say, what's the ultimate goal? Because for 2 or 3 years, probably since 2016 and the sweep that we faced against the Pelicans, we've had to look in the mirror and say, how are we going to get better? And sometimes it feels like we have gotten better, but defensively, we certainly haven't. And every year it's the same old story. So I don't think you can look at Stotts and say it's all his fault, because I do think that even if Dwayne Casey got fired and Nick Nurse was the coach of that exact same team, they're not winning the championship next year. Kawhi was pivotal. I just made up a new word for him. He's so important that no one else can compare. But he was pivotal to that team winning the championship. Pivot table.
He was able to pivot.
He's excelling.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest example of that is look where they're at now. They get rid of a guy like Ibaka. They get rid of a defensive center in Marc Gasol. Kawhi leaves, and it's not like Van Vliet is bad, and Pascal Siakam was most improved player in the league.
Sure.
And they're not making playoffs, and they did terrible last year. So, again, it's not all coaching. It's definitely coaching and personnel. But Stotts will be the first domino to fall. And a new coach is going to come in. I would imagine that Neil's not going to trade CJ this year again. I just don't see it because I think he wants a new coach to be able to come in, work with these two stars, see what they can do, and see if they really make a difference. And it's unfortunate because every year that goes by, CJ's value continues to go down. And that's, that's going to be kind of one of those issues that we might run into. So, but again, I don't want to spend too much time on that now because we still have the 2 Memphis games that we want to cover, today's game and Fridays. But yeah, it's tough. I don't want people, and fans are going to be upset about everything right now, but honestly, take away that we competed pretty good against 2 top teams. It sucks that we lost by the 1 point. At this point, you say it's been a coin toss. Well, it feels like this last week has just been coin tossing like Two-Face and Batman. He's sort of flipping coins left and right, just killing us off. It's been pretty rough. So we're losing every coin toss we get. It's double heads every time. So hopefully we're calling tails,
Yeah. And we did fight in both those games. I feel like we didn't have big leads or anything like that. We didn't blow the game. We never had a 4-point lead with a minute left and then we blew it. It's just one of those situations where the guys fought really hard. So moving into this Memphis game that happened on Friday night. So Nurkic looked absolutely incredible.
Dominated. Just
26
looked
and
great.
17.
Yeah, and the
Wow.
minutes were good. He's done. He's off of this restriction. He's playing big
29.
minutes again.
Hmm.
He is and again, they didn't have Valanciunas, who's given him fits before, quite
Yes.
frankly.
Yes.
But and really outside of they have no other bigs that you're really going to be kind of scared of. So Nurk absolutely should have
Well,
dominated that game.
Jaren Jackson
And
played in that game.
yeah, but he's coming back. Was what his first game back, or he's with the first couple games back
Second,
since he's
it
had that
was
injury. So
was second game back, but he looked okay, but I mean, he's a decent rim protector. He's still a really young guy. I mean, Nurkic took advantage of him. He really did.
and he had the meniscus. I mean, he's got knee issues. I mean, you know, you got to understand. I mean, I know he's back, but it's not like he was back. It's not the same JJJ as before. So absolutely expect Nurk to dominate, and he did, and I'm happy to see that. But again, it's just one of the situations where other guys didn't step up. It's I don't know. Memphis is one of those weird teams that last year in the regular season they absolutely crushed us until the playoff, and then when we got into the playoff tournament, we whooped them down 2 times with ease.
Yeah,
I don't say with ease, but we took
we
care of
handled it.
business.
Yeah,
We looked like the better team, and I mean
yeah.
you got to hope that maybe that happens again. I don't know.
So in this game, Dame had 27, CJ has 22, Nurk with the big 26. And then, yeah, I mean, Melo and Powell have 13. There's not a ton there. I feel like let's look at our shooting really quick because I'm kind of curious. We shot 40% from three. I will say this, we were an absolute turnstile on defense. I mean, Ja Morant went for he looked like an MVP candidate against us. It was absolutely ridiculous. And you should not get shredded at the point of attack like that. I understand that he's a Westbrookian level guard at driving. There's no reason you should let a guy just absolutely dominate you from start to finish in a game like that.
Yeah. Again, they're one of those teams that want to push. They're a very fast-paced team. Even if you make a shot, they're getting that ball back in. And we talk about effort and energy. It's going to be the two big E's of this team all year. And getting back on that defense and getting set up. And when you miss the ball, the transition defense, it's non-existent. And I don't know how much is that his thoughts, how much of those
I
the
don't know.
players just don't have the oomph in them right now.
I
And
don't know.
it's teams are just doing whatever they want. I mean, the points in the paint in that Memphis game was just absolutely absurd. It's not okay. Like you can't
No,
give up that many points in the paint.
I agree. And I don't know. And there's just a lack of adjustments on defense there that frustrate me to no end because you got to try something different. It's just frustrating. I mean, so anyway, so the points in the paint thing was a huge discrepancy. That happens, and then you're looking at the shooting, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the fix is right now, and I think that's the problem as Blazer fans this week is this week exposed some serious issues within the team. It looks like to me we don't have anybody on the team with an edge. That's the Marcus Smart type. Even Dylan Brooks in that Memphis game, he looked pissed off, and Dame kind of brings that energy sometimes for us, but it doesn't look like anyone on the team right now really cares enough to fire everybody up. And I don't know what the answer is to that. And maybe just a few wins or a good week cures all the ails at this point. But right now, it's just tough.
The only man that I see with any kind of hype on this team and any kind of fire is Zach Collins on the bench. The dude's got some celebrations. I mean, his outfits alone, I mean, are enough to inspire hope. But yeah, I agree with you. Gary Trent to me was kind of that dog.
Yes.
And I still think that I'm not mad at the trade for Powell. I still think
No,
Powell's the overall better player.
sure.
I don't know about his role right now. We've talked about how I don't like him starting, but the energy and the fire that Trent came out with. I mean, he would just snarl at people. I mean, he
Yes.
had that look in his eye that was just a
Yep.
different level. And it's not like the team was doing good while we had him. So I'm not saying necessarily that, like, again, trading them has like changed this team necessarily, but you would still hope in these close games that fire, like, it spreads throughout the team. And
Yeah.
we've talked about it all year. We don't know if it is the fans. Last time we had fans in the stands when we were healthy, we were Western
Yep.
Conference final team. And all of a sudden, you go into you get hurt, then the COVID hits, you kind of limp into that bubble and things look all right. And then you're just too exhausted, no fans. Then this year starts off, no fans again. We're just one of those teams that tends to be just very absorbent of the energy that the crowd puts
Yes,
out there,
I
and
agree.
it just seems like I think that's a bigger issue than people want to talk about. I mean, I know there's all sorts of other issues with this team, but you just don't see they'll make a big play or a dunk or whatever the case is, and you don't see the bench is hyped up. You just don't see the
Yeah.
players coming down smiling, and
Well,
I mean, it's bad.
and three of these guys are, I mean, a bunch of them are new. I mean, if you look at Covington, Jones, you're looking at Norman Powell. They've never seen full stands of Blazer fans going absolutely nuts. So, I mean, if it's an embarrassment on defense, Portland fans would let you know when you're embarrassing us on defense, I feel like, and get into you a little
Yeah.
bit. And if you make a great play, they're equally or double as loyal to you in cheering you on and cheering for your success. So I mean, we've said it since the preseason, right? Like that was one of our in our very first episode. We're like, I wonder how the lack of fans is really going to affect us because Portland does have, I think, a great, probably a top 5 stadium as far as home fans go. We're highly lauded and highly respected. So I agree with you, man. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I do know somebody's got to step up as a leader and say, like, this is embarrassing. We have got to shut this down. And they got to be vocal about it. I don't even care if they're vocal to the press. I don't give a damn at this point. Like, just get out there and have some pride in the product that you're putting out there and say, hey, we want to be better. And here's what our plan is, right?
Right. I mean, Dane came out today after the second Memphis game, and he's
Mm.
like, I got to be better personally. I'm not playing good. I've given him some slack. I mean, he is still our superstar. He's still our MVP. He's still like the guy that needs to lead this team. But he's just had such a tough load. He's getting
Yes.
pounded down low. He's been hurt. The knee's been an issue. He's having to exert so
Oh,
much energy so often that I can understand why he normally doesn't have the best defense because he has to do so much in the
yes.
offense. But I still want to see I agree with you. The fire and the leadership, the accountability to call some of these guys out. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't called out Melo more. And I understand you don't want to offend a Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
but it's like, dude, you gotta get out there and play some better defense.
Yes.
I think there's been some players that have made some comments about guys, and I'm not going to name names. And I mean, a lot of fans want to think that they're talking about Stotts, so they want to call out their coach, but I disagree. I think there's been some energy issues with the team. I think there's some stuff going on internally, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of that is Jones. I think that's why he's not playing as much.
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised a lot of that is Melo. These guys are having to make up a lot of ground on this bad defensive outputs, and
Yep.
but I think when
Yeah.
we saw the second half of last year and going into the bubble, especially, I think we saw just a happy Carmelo. I mean, that dude was smiling left and right, like he was having a good time. I don't see that anymore. CJ was always, he's just that one of the happiest dudes out there. Like he's always smiling, just joking around with other players like him and Damon.
Not this year.
He looks upset all the time. You look at their eyes and they're just upset. And I don't know, again, how much of that is coaching and how much of that is just you're sick of losing? It's got to wear on you. I mean, the second
Yeah.
half of the schedule is going to be exhausting with the travel and the condensed games. And now you're slipping in the standings and there's just so much going on mentally with these
Yeah.
guys that I think has become a bigger issue than we want to
Yeah,
admit.
and we're not the only ones noticing it. I mean, I'm on Blazer Twitter this weekend. After every game, there's more, I wouldn't say negativity, but there's more like just you can see the hope just shrinking out of people where it's like they're starting to see that the team is in a funk. And it's that we should give credit to the reporters. I mean, Jason Quick was asking about Stotts about a
Yeah.
funk like a week and a half ago, and Stotts was like, we're not in a funk. And then this week we come out and we just don't look right. I mean, so people who are around this team can feel the chemistry is there's just something wrong. Now, what is it? I don't know. The other thing is, I just hope it doesn't cost us a lot in the offseason. What I mean by that is I hope Norman Powell isn't a casualty of this. I hope Derek Jones. I mean, I think it's going to cost us some of these guys because it seems like it's not a place people want to be. And if you're talking about a head coaching shakeup and now the minutes are up in the air, these guys, there's uncertainty. And I understand signing with another team is uncertainty, but if the money is the same elsewhere, Portland used to have that advantage over these fringe level starters because they loved our culture. Do we have that anymore? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a lot to talk about. I mean, the offseason's approaching pretty quick, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here. We're almost done with our recaps. Let's finish up this last Memphis game from today. Not great, man. Again, so we came out. I'm gonna give fans a number real quick. 29%. Okay, 29%. So if I told you 29%, what would you think I was talking about?
You and I shooting at the rec center.
Hey, I could shoot better than 29% because I'm like a solid 30%. But no, No, so we shot 29%. And when I say we shot 29%, I do not mean from three. I mean from the field in the first half. We shot under 30%. Ugh,
I don't think you're gonna.
that's
I don't think you're gonna carry a lead going into halftime shooting like that.
no, that's disgusting. And then again, we talk about the same exact thing as Friday night. When
Mhm.
you miss shots, this type of team that has a guy
Yes.
like John Morant, they get those rebounds. And even when you at this point get lucky enough to make a shot,
Mhm.
at this point, they are pushing that ball up so fast. The transition defense this is already bad, makes them look even worse. And again, they were just doing whatever they wanted in the paint. Little
Yes.
floaters, little layups, and making a couple quick pass because somebody who just happens to be just sprinted back down there and is in position now has to go out, and that guy, he's flipping it right around his back doing an easy layup.
Yep.
It's rough, man. That it's just you can't have that. And it's not all on the defense because the offense is just not putting the ball in, and it's really hard to go back and defend
Yep.
on those long misses like that.
So we shot so we shot 37% from the field. That's what we
Yeah.
normally shoot from three. We shot that from the field, 39 of 105 shots. They shot 46%. So they scored 120 points on less shots than we even took, although they did make more field goals than we did. But like I agree with you. I mean, it's just and giving up, we gave up what 130 to the Grizzlies in the first game, and then 120 in the second game. They're not a great offensive team. I'm
They're
sorry, but
not.
John Morant can get you 30. That's fine. But if he gets you 30, there's no excuse for giving up that many points to those teams, man. It just doesn't make sense.
No, 74 points in the paint the first game. I mean, that's going to absolutely dominate you. And that's without Valanciunas. And that guy, I don't know what happened to him or what kind of steroids or drugs that fool is on. But since when did Valanciunas become this elite 3-point shooter? This dude's making jumpers away from the basket. Like,
He
I
couldn't do
mean,
that in
like Steph
Toronto.
Curry over here.
Yeah, he couldn't do that in Toronto when they traded him because they would have kept him like forever if he could have. He's gotten better every year he's been in the league. He's a freak. He's so good.
Dude looks like Jokic grew a beard and a mohawk or whatever weird little hairdo he's got going on. It's just like, let me go play for Memphis real quick so I can knock Portland out of the playoffs.
He's
Like,
yeah, he's one of the
I
most
don't know how
underrated
you're
centers in the
expecting
league.
Nurk
He's
to
amazing.
do anything about that. Like, I mean, watching that game is like poor Nurk over and over. It's like I can't go out. I have to be back in because they're
Yep.
driving in the paint, like just strolling
Yeah,
through.
I don't blame him. I mean, at the end of the day, I do think we just need more paint defense, right? More interior defense. Because look, at the beginning of the season and in the first 2 months, we talked about the perimeter defense, and it sucked, right? And there's no excuse for it. But it's a 3-point shooting league. I'm totally fine with losing by threes. You should not get dominated by Ja Morant and Jonas Valanciunas in the paint every single time they want to score. Slow-mo goes down there and does whatever he wants with us. And this is a young team that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, that doesn't have a core that's been together for 5 years like we do.
Mhm.
It's a problem, man. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, when Dylan's out there looking like Kobe Bryant, you got issues, man. So I don't know. We got down pretty bad. We kept it close enough. I mean, I think at one point it got to 15. That was pretty much the worst it got. We pretty much hovered around 10 and 12. Then Melo comes out and just bombs away in the fourth quarter. Four
Yep.
straight threes, 12 points. All of a sudden, we get back down within two because we couldn't stop him really at that point. We still
Yep.
giving up points. We got within 12 or two.
Yep.
Everything in the world looks right. I mean, this is right after. No, this wasn't after, but this was right around the same time that we had that tip ball that goes down and they get the layup off the tip, and then immediately the next play get another little jumper, and then Melo just runs around and does his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great and all, but then it's just like outside of that, I don't think they hit a shot in the rest of the quarter until about the 4 or 5 minute mark, and then Powell got a layup. So
And okay,
that's
so
the
can we talk
problem.
about the last couple plays of that game? So what exactly happened? Okay, so here's what's going on. Norman Powell's supposed to inbound the ball. We were down two, I believe, with how many seconds left? It wasn't very much. It was like 30 seconds left, right? It was within a minute. So Dame runs around the corner, tries to get it in the corner, doesn't get it. Nurk goes down low, doesn't get it. So he bombs it over the top to Covington. Did we have a timeout at that point that we could have just used to like reset?
We did. We had two timeouts. And I think I understand why he didn't call. I mean, I'm assuming you don't call him because if you don't, that play doesn't work out. You need them to be able to come back in after
Sure.
you foul. But
Yes.
again, you're at that point where you have a chance to tie that game up, and or no, it
Yeah.
was a 3 point game. But even so,
So
you're
it was
going for the
one
two for
possession.
one.
Sure.
Yeah, you're going for a 2 for 1 is what you're trying to do.
That's
You're
right.
trying to get a really quick shot and then go down and then get the next one to try to win the game or foul again and at least keep it a 3 point game so you can try to hit one.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This is the second game that I've seen Norman Powell attempt to inbound the ball and has gone terribly
Foul.
wrong because the
Horribly.
Memphis game, the Friday night game, he did the same thing.
Yes.
They were trying to get it. He messed up. He tried to go directly down to Nurk and put Nurk in a terrible position for that turnaround little floater thing that didn't go in. Granted, Nurk was hot all game, but it's like that's 2 times that you have a guy that's not accustomed to passing the ball, trying to inbound the ball. I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't get it. I mean, CJ is a good passer. Have him inbound the ball. I understand you want your shooters out there, but Norman Powell's as good of a shooter as CJ if he's open. So, like, you don't need your. It's not going to be a shot creation thing where you need CJ to ISO ball for 8 seconds and then score. It's a 2 for 1. He's just going to throw it in there and try to get a shot off. It doesn't. That to me is like this. The Fire Stotts crowd. He just keeps giving them ammunition every game, dude.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm about to. I'm in the garage right now, spray painting my sign. They go around to the Motor Center and hold it up, yelling out "Fire Stop." It's like
I
I'm
don't
getting to
want
that
to.
point myself.
I don't want to pin it
Hey,
on anybody, but it just feels like he's just drawn up some pretty bad stuff the last week.
well,
And I
that's
mean, the
two
guys are
games now in the last week where I feel like a timeout would have made a big difference. I mean, the
yes,
Denver game, and now then you have them to use. It's almost like he got so scared and upset after he called that timeout with 40 seconds left in the other game when the fans just ripped him a new one. Then
sure.
now he's like, all right, I won't use my timeout. It's like it's almost like he's just see what you guys are doing, you Fire Stocks people. You're just upsetting him so much now he's spiting you.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
anyway, that's the big deal with the Memphis game. It sucks. We needed these games. They were down in the standings. Now they're half a game behind us. We still have the lead on them,
Yeah.
but they're half a game behind us now. And I believe they have the tiebreaker. So uh, not ideal.
Nope.
And on top of that, we got passed up by the Mavericks. So
Yep.
now we're the seventh seed, and we've talked about this a
Yep.
lot about wanting to stay in a position where you can avoid that play-in tournament because you do not want that play-in tournament to happen. If you get stuck in those extra games, you're in big trouble trying to go against the top seed after playing an extra 2 games.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing for the league. It's not a good thing in general. I understand it's a little more fun and then gets a little extra money out of it and some extra like highly rated games because people are going to watch those, but it's terrible for the league. It's terrible for these teams that have to do it. And I did not want to be the team that has to do it. And this is becoming a problem if we even make the play-in tournament now.
Yeah. So where we're at right now, we're 32 and 28. The Grizzlies are 31 and 28. Now they hold the tiebreaker over us. So we have one more, a half a win on them, but we play them on Wednesday of this week. So if they beat us again, we are behind the 8 ball terribly for the 8 seed. And when you're talking 8-9, that's you have to win multiple games to get in if you lose past the 8. So uh, look, man, we'll go through that next week or the week after, and we'll see how we're doing. But we need to have a big week coming up. And this week, I think we could string together a good week if we can play a little better defense. Here's the week. I'm going to give it to you. The Pacers start on Tuesday. We play in Indiana for that game. We play in Memphis for the Grizzlies on Wednesday, back to back on the road. Then we play
Mhm.
in Brooklyn with the Nets on Friday, and then Sunday we play against the Celtics, all on the road. This is going to be really tough, dude.
This whole second half of this season has been tough. I mean,
Golly.
Brooklyn's not going to have Harden. He's still dealing with the hamstring, I believe. And then Kevin
Boston doesn't
Durant's
look
kind
tough.
of been on or on. But yeah, I mean, you got to take advantage. You got to take advantage of the Indianapolis game. They
Mhm.
haven't looked super hot. They're not a great team right now. They have some pretty good bigs, but they're not going to have Miles Turner. He's
Yep.
out.
Yep.
So again, Sabonis
They've
is
been
always an
banged
issue.
up.
They have been banged up. They've
Yeah.
missed a lot of guys, and so they're that's a team that's not in playoff position right now that you got to take advantage of. It's one of the few teams that you're going to have just basically a must win at this point. And then obviously Memphis is a must win because
Yes.
you can't give up. You don't want to fall to that 8 seed, so you need to try to keep afloat against them. I think it's inevitable we're going to fall below them because of how tough our schedule is. But either way, you
Got to
don't want to
punch
give
them.
one up to them. And then Boston and Brooklyn, obviously, we played Boston really well last time at full strength. We'll be at full strength again. We should have a healthy full strength Nurk, which could make a little bit of a difference.
Sure.
And I just Brooklyn, I don't see us. They just have too many weapons. That
Yep.
team is annoyingly good. So
Yeah, it's going to be a weird week. I think with it being a road trip, on obviously 500 or better, please. We need to play 500 or better. I know it's going to be tough to do, and it's a big ask. But at this point, when you drop this many games to these good teams, you're going to play against your competition like Memphis. You're going to play against when you're talking about the Celtics. That's a game where they're right around 500 in the East. You've got to beat them. You have to go into their building and you got to get wins because if you fall to the 9 or the 10, it's going to be really difficult. I mean, really difficult.
because at this point we're 6 games up on New Orleans, and we have the tiebreaker. So
Yeah.
chances are we're not missing the play-in tournament.
No,
Like, I
we'll
don't
make the
think that's
play-in.
the issue.
But the
But I
seeding is
mean,
huge.
yeah, but the seeding is a big deal because you don't want to. I really don't think anybody wants to deal with Steph Curry in that play-in tournament. They haven't looked great, but it's still Steph Curry in a playoff atmosphere. Memphis has already had their way with us, and the Spurs have looked good against us. So, yeah,
Yeah.
not an ideal
Yeah,
situation.
and you mentioned it earlier on the pod, and I want to go back to this a little bit. So Dame just doesn't look like superstar MVP Dame, and I don't know that there's anything that's necessarily going to cure that. We gave him the rest that he wanted. I mean, I was listening to Chad doing this week, and he was saying, "Well, Dame didn't, we're not resting him enough." It's like we just rested him, and he still didn't look that great in the games that he played. So, at this point, we can't afford to rest Dame every other game and just forfeit these games. We have to put him out there and try to get dubs. So it's one of those situations where what do you do with the Dame not looking like his 40-point Dame self?
I have no idea. I don't know how to fix it. I mean, he's looking like he's getting all right shots. Yeah, I know he's not getting the foul calls that he's used to getting.
Yeah,
He is, but he's not. He also doesn't seem like he's driving as much. I've not really seen much of Dame in the end of these games, and just in
explode.
really important times throughout the game, like when the team's making a run or whatever. I'm not seeing him hit his shots. I mean, he's getting points, but it seems quiet. We talk about quiet scoring.
Yes.
And basically, what we mean by that is like the non-splash plays or a non-clutch shot, or it's like you get a couple free throws here and there. Oh, you drive and got 4 points when you're down by 8, like cool, and then it just disappears. CJ is notorious, for my opinion, being a silent scorer. He'll come up with
Yes.
20 something points, but how does CJ get 20 points?
Yep.
Dame normally didn't feel like that. I mean, Dame was the kind of guy that would come out and hit 2 deep threes. Like, oh wow, Dame's in it. That's huge in the fourth quarter. He's been known as one of the top fourth quarter scoring guards and players overall in the league the last couple of years. It's one of the things that he has a rep for, and it's not there. And I understand early in the season he was leading in the clutch scoring and all these clutch points. And I think more of that honestly had to do with the fact that we were always in clutch games because we were always in these close games.
Good point.
I mean, yeah, your top guy's getting a lot of points when you're always within 5 points in the final 5 minutes or whatever that weird clutch stat is.
Yeah.
But lately, I mean, the knee's got to be bothering him still. I know he had the hamstring issue or whatever he had some issue with some soft tissue, the hamstring, I'm pretty sure. And so it's like, how much of that is still affecting him? How much of the workload is affecting him? All these games back to back to back to back to back. I don't know, man. We talk about the fire. I just don't see the fire there. So all that stuff combined, it can sap it from these guys. Some of these guys who are used to winning and they're used to making big plays and hitting big shots. And maybe he's just not on. He's missing shots and it's getting in his head because of losing these close games. And you got to think psychologically. It's like when you know you're the leader on the team and you constantly get touted as an MVP candidate and you're missing these big shots, you're not playing at a good level. Maybe it's because of your injury. Maybe it's not. Then all it does is make you heavier and heavier and heavier. And you get in your own head.
Sure.
And the fact that he came out today and was like, I got to play better. I mean, you can tell it's getting to him. And I'm worried that that's going to be an issue because these guys got to have I'm going to kill you mentality. They got to go out there every night. I'm going to whoop you and beat you. And I don't feel like Dame has that right now. And it's a mental block that he's got to get through, even with the injury.
Yeah, I think if anyone can, he can. And I think that this team can lean on experience for better or worse and say, we've been in the playoffs, we beat good teams, we stepped on Memphis last year with the same exact core that they have now, basically. I think Dame's just got to figure it out and he's got to get comfortable. And I think he's got to see the ball go in the hoop from deep a little bit. I mean, you talked about he hits the 2 back-to-back deep ones. When was the last time you saw him do that consistently in a game? Just even shooting a couple. He's known as one of the best or the best deep 3 shooter in the league. And he's not hitting his 3-point ball with efficiency. And, I think it equates the other part of that is I think it helps with the driving too. When he's hitting those, he's got guys leaning out towards him and then he drives by, right? it's sort of like the counterpunch to the punch. And right now, neither one exists, so nobody's scared of either. And I do think that he's going to get it back on track at some point. I just wonder how Stotts is going to get him there, how this team's going to motivate him and get him some open looks. I think him playing off the ball helps, which they did that a lot early on this
They're
week.
doing more of it.
They did a lot of that against the Clippers. I think you got to have Dame play off the ball, and you got to take
Nugget.
you got to make CJ do. He's been good on the playmaking this week. He's averaging 5-6 assists all week long, but you got to take some more of those on-ball responsibilities and make CJ shoulder some of that load. That's what we pay him $35 million a year to do.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I don't know what's going to fix Dame. I agree. I think you start getting a couple of these close games to go your way and momentum changes and these guys' mentality changes. I mean, it's like a curse right now or a cancer. It eats away at you when you start losing these close games. It's like you start not to trust guys to make big shots. You start kind of being like, man, if he wouldn't have done that, we would have had a chance.
Right.
And it starts to create this bad chemistry instead of creating a magical potion, like you're creating poison. That's just bad. So I don't know, man. I agree. I don't know how it's going to fix. We got to keep an eye on Dame. I mean, I think this is going to take him seeing some balls go in the bucket, like you said, to really turn that around. So we'll see.
I'm not too worried. I'm not as negative as the rest of the fans are. That's for sure.
We never are, because we're just real. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. We can be upset and we can be optimistic about things at the same time. So, well, here's one thing I want to do. I want to get into this because we talked about it a little bit. You talked about some interior paint issues. I have a fun one this week for Blazing New Trails Player of the Week, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on this because this is a guy who I think was very hot and cold for a lot of fans last year. He was brought in as a guy that we actually wanted for quite a while. He was a guy that we really wanted on the team in past years. It never actually worked out. But you know what? We said, hey, we need him now. We're a little banged up. So we went out and got him last year when Nurk got hurt. He was making $20 million, and I am talking about Hassan Whiteside. So Hassan Whiteside, we let him go. We decided to trade for Kanter. We used our trade exemption. We basically got Kanter for free, and I'm all for it. We weren't going to pay Hassan Whiteside the money Hassan Whiteside was going to get, right? Top shot blocker in the league, top 3 rebounder in the league. Well, he didn't get that money. He signed a vet minimum contract to go play for the Kings, a team that already had Bagley and already had Rashawn Holmes. And he goes there to basically be a backup center. And here's his stats so far. So here's for the fans, our good old buddy Whiteside, a guy that we knew to be one of the elite shot blockers in the league. And he's averaging 15 minutes a game at 8 points, 6 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks. When he gets over 20 minutes for the Kings, he's actually putting up near double-double numbers and getting blocks. But lately he's been playing about those low teens and not doing anything. So it's unfortunate. I mean, again, he was kind of hit or miss with a lot of fans last year. I think his energy gets called into question. He just chases stats.
Sure.
But my question for you is, would you rather have him as your backup center right now than Kanter? This is going to be a weird one for a lot of fans because I think people love Kanter and his energy. But from a team standpoint,
the initial reaction is going to be no. And the main reason is because people hated how, I don't have a better word for it, but I'm going to use the word lazy Whiteside was with his playing a lot of the time. He would play really hard sometimes and make great plays, but he needed to be kind of like the Myers Leonard effect. He needed to be fired up. He needed to get hit in the face first before he would get into.
I would never use Myers Leonard's name on the podcast again, for the record.
Go
on.
So anyway, he needed somebody to punch him in the mouth first before he would hit second gear. And so the initial reaction from the fans is going to be no. I did start to think yes, but here's the other situation we needed to consider. We were bringing in Kanter with him knowing he was going to be a backup center. Nurk breaking his wrist and being out for 32 games. We had no idea at the time that we made that trade and at the time we let Whiteside walk that we would be missing Nurk for that long. Now, if I knew that, I would prefer Whiteside as a starting center in Nurkic's replacement. I know Kanter does a lot, but defensively he's terrible. And when you pair him up in that starting unit, he's terrible. But the thing is, Whiteside would not want to be Nurkic's backup. He's not going to sit there and want to play the 15 to 20 minutes thing is pissing him off in Sacramento. He thinks he's better than that. And I think he's going to have to do something about that.
He had to know going into that when he signs a vet minimum that's his role. He knew that they had Bagley and Holmes. So I'm confused why he either makes that deal when he could have possibly gone to a team like LA, who personally I think they would have much rather had Whiteside than the way Drummond is playing for his $20-something million. But all right, here's my deal with Whiteside. If you can convince him, and I agree, it takes a little bit of convincing to get him to. He's kind of a drama queen. He can
Right.
be. But if
Yeah.
you can get him to buy into the backup role, I think he gives you just as good as rebounding as Cantor. Maybe not offensively and on the putbacks, but he can definitely be a good defensive rebounder. He averages 12, 13 rebounds a game throughout his career. He's a great rebounder.
Yes.
He probably has, again, just as close, maybe not as nice a footwork, but he's got definitely some more, or just as even of an offensive game.
Got more power.
He can post score. He definitely has more power. But the number one thing for me is, even if you want to knock his net rating for defense, I still think he deters guys from going in the middle more than Cantor does. You're going to play the same type of role. He's going to drop in there. He's not going to do anything on the perimeter, but neither is Cantor.
Mm-hmm.
But at least his shot blocking is enough to say, hey, I don't want to go in there when Whiteside's in there. It's not as easy. If he can go in there and just be a shot blocker and you say, go foul as much as you want, you're only going to get 20 minutes a game. Just go out there and make sure they don't get paint points. That, to me, is where I almost would rather have him out there, especially when you talk about a lineup with him and Melo, than I would Cantor at this point.
There's no doubt in my mind. I know. There's no doubt in my mind that we would be a better team with more front court defense, with more rim protection. I mean, you just said Zach Collins. Like, how many Blazer fans at the beginning of the year and in the preseason were we saying, bye, Zach Collins, don't ever talk to me again? But now I'm hearing these rumors that people were like, well, hey, like maybe we could bring Zach Collins back next year to play rim protector, put like power forward, tweener, center, and he could sign for like $6 million a year for 2 years or something. And it's like, dude, you guys hated Zach Collins. You couldn't stand him. But the fact that Nurkic is the only rim protection we have on this entire roster, because Covington and Derek Jones are good help defenders, but they're not rim protectors. They're not true, big shot blockers. It's a problem, and that's on Olshey. At the end of the day, he's got to go get somebody that can play better defense. Now, also, if we weren't breaking down, if our guards weren't breaking down on every single drive and people weren't getting into the paint,
every drive.
I mean, that's the problem with Whiteside, right? Is like if every single person is going right at Whiteside, maybe he'd be blocking a bunch of shots and it would just be a pure volume thing. So yeah, you're probably right, but it's just like this whole roster needs to be overhauled from a defensive standpoint, and you have to be respectable on defense. You just have to be.
Well, that's what's tough. It's like you trade to get Norman Powell, who is a better offensive player, probably maybe not as good of a shooter, although his numbers were still there as Trent.
He's a better
but driver. He's longer, and he does a little bit more defensively. Okay, you bring in him, you get rid of Trent, probably a rental either way. You go out and you get Derek Jones. You go out and you get Covington. Like, it's not like Neil didn't attempt to upgrade the defense. I just think he countered that and those good moves with Cantor and with bringing back Melo. Cantor I was all right with. Like, again, you didn't have to pay for Cantor. To get him the big of his level for basically free because of that trade exemption.
Excellent.
Like, I understand that completely. But then the move to bring back Melo instead of another guard or another guy off the bench that can give you just as much offense but can do a little bit more hustle and defense, it like counters out the Covington and Jones. It's like you went and got two good defensive players, yay,
two more,
and then you brought in two terrible defensive players, and it doesn't help. I don't know.
And then you add in injury stuff. You got Nurkic, who's like Nurkic is the linchpin of the defense. He's the most important part of the defense. He's the rim protector. And you've seen this week that when he plays 29 to 30 minutes, we're competitive in games. Yes, the Memphis games got out of hand. I don't think that was all his fault. But, I mean, if you look at that Denver game, do you think we would have even been close in that game if Nurkic didn't play? The Clippers game, he didn't play, but
he lost the glacier, man.
He lost the glacier. He fell into the ocean as global climate change. Anyway.
But I hear you. So just curious. On the Whiteside thing. It's another, it's where he's at right now in Sacramento. Those are the numbers he's putting up. But I always kind of wonder, it's like if he was going to go somewhere, if he could have been brought back for 2.5 mil or whatever the vet minimum is, like right now over Cantor, you don't lose too much of the rebounding and the offense. I mean, again, the offensive rebounds, maybe you lose a little bit, but just the rim protecting, not the greatest defender. I'm not sitting here trying to tout him up as the, prime Dwight Howard over here by any means, but I still feel like guys aren't going to want to go up against a 7-foot, Hassan Whiteside with the wingspan of a god, swatting balls down left and right, fouling you, and then having to deal with his post game and his moves on the other end.
There's no
I
doubt
feel like
he
he
would have
would have
helped.
better
He
backup
would have
center.
helped with the interior defense. The perimeter, he wouldn't have helped at all. But there's no doubt to
Neither is
me,
Cantor.
he's a top 3 shot blocker in the league when he plays 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, even 20-something minutes. I mean, that's what he does. So
Yeah.
that's my Blazing New Trails ex-player of the week. Kind of a guy that's someone to touch base, checking with old Whiteside, a big addition last year that's not eating in greener pastures anymore. And I wonder if people would bring him back to the farm, but I'm
I think
curious
it's
what you
going to
thought.
be, I think you brought up, so we talked about he's playing behind a guy like Rashawn Holmes, who's a really nice two-way center. I really
Perfect
think
center.
that, I really think that the Blazers have got to figure out a way to get someone who can back up Nurkic and play big minutes, because Nurkic's health is an issue, and it can't be Zach Collins because his health is an issue too. I think the Blazers have got to figure out a shot blocking, rim protecting center who can potentially help you out and play 20, 25 minutes if Nurkic is banged up. And they're going to have to figure that out in the offseason.
Yeah, for sure. But that's really all I got, man. I mean, there's a lot of games this week, a lot to recap, but it's a funk. I don't care what Stott says. We're in a funk. Whether it be guys being banged up or just again, I think it's a more issue on the mental side of things. I think just the fatigue, the schedule combined with the losing these close games, it wears on these guys. There's no fans to hype them up. The players aren't hyping each other up. They just look upset. So hopefully, like you said, hopefully we get some wins. We get Indiana. We should be able to eat them alive, hopefully. Yeah. Then you get your revenge on Memphis. That's got to feel good. And then if you can get those two and then go into and hopefully split Boston and the Celtic, or the Boston and Brooklyn. That's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
Then maybe you feel a little bit better about the week, and ideally you kind of go into the week after that and we have a better pod next week, but we'll see.
And it's a testament to the Blazers that we were in that 5-6 range for so long, because we did feast on bad teams during the first half of the year. We were really banged up. I mean, this is a real talk podcast. We're sitting here talking about the Blazers still have a shot to win a few games this week and hold on to that 6-7-ish range. If we're in that range, fine. I don't even mind being the 7 seed. It's if we drop below that I'll start hitting the sirens. And even still, if Dame and Nurkic can play 30 minutes a game and look good and look healthy, I think we'll just continue to build on that. I understand that this week was a tough week, and we definitely need to look in the mirror and we need to get tough on ourselves in our coaching. But at the end of the day, we still have a shot. We're still not a lottery team yet.
Still and potential playoff team.
Yeah. So the other thing we can focus on here is we can talk about some of the cool things we have going on with the pod. We did successfully get the pod on Spotify. So if you're listening to that on there, that's great. Please let us know on Twitter at Rip City, or it's Talk Rip on Twitter is where you can hit us up. At Talk Rip.
Yeah, and for sure.
The other thing is YouTube is picking up a little bit, and we love the comments. We appreciate the comments out of the fans. Keep that up. I've responded, or you've responded to every single comment we've had. So please keep hitting us up on the questions. We love it.
Yeah, we try to keep it interesting. You never know which one of us is responding on the pod. We're very sneaky because we both use the same thing. But no, seriously, guys, subscribe, share, tell your buddies if you enjoy us. Any feedback you can give. We're definitely going to try to work on some of the production quality of this pod as we start to gain some steam. So try to make it a little more fun for you guys for sure. But again, it's getting down the end of the season. We're going to continue to try to be as real as possible. It's not always what you want to hear. It's not always Stott sucks and this and that. It's just trying to break things down as best we can. And so far, we've gotten some good feedback from you guys, and the engagement's been awesome. Keep it up. Otherwise, man, that's it. That's all I got.
That's it for me too, man. And just like that, we out.
Rip City Real Talk. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.